Welcome. I'm top. Redirect federal money that currently goes to health insurance companies under the Affordable Care Act and send it directly to individuals. U.S. airlines canceled more than 2,500 weekend flights as the FAA cuts air traffic. This decision comes as the government shutdown shows little signs of ending. From an al-Qaeda fighter to a White House guest, Syria's new president will meet with President Trump in the White House Monday. The U.S. grants Hungary a one-year waiver from Russian oil sanctions. That means this EU nation won't face penalties for importing oil from Russia for now. Our panel weighs in. Many people cut down on eating sugar to be healthier, but are some sugars riskier than others? And how do we know which foods contain hidden sugar? Vital Signs' Brendan Fallon shares insights from a leading expert in obesity and diabetes prevention.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Senators held a weekend session as the government shutdown stretched into its 40th day today, but there were little signs of any progress. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says we're only a handful of votes away from reopening the government. Democratic leaders are pushing for an extension of subsidies under the Affordable Care Act as a condition to end the shutdown. President Trump said on Truth Social that Obamacare is the worst health care for the highest price. He also urged Republicans to redirect federal money that currently goes to health insurance companies under the Affordable Care Act and send it directly to individuals. Regarding tariffs, he also posted on Truth Social that people that are against tariffs are fools, adding that a dividend of at least $2,000 a person could be paid to Americans. A late-night decision on Friday from the Supreme Court on food stamps. It allowed the federal government to put a pause on fully funding SNAP in November. The court's decision pauses a lower court's order that forced the Trump administration to fully fund the food stamps program for November. The Trump administration had already committed to partially funding SNAP. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson issued the pause to give an appeals court more time to make a judgment on this government's appeal. She is assigned to handle emergency appeals from the First Circuit Court. The Supreme Court has not weighed in on the merits of the case. More than 2,500 flights were canceled this weekend as the FAA cut air traffic. This left travelers across the U.S. facing widespread disruptions amid the ongoing government shutdown. Officials warn the situation could worsen into the Thanksgiving holidays if the shutdown continues. According to FlightAware, the cancellations escalated yesterday with more than 1,500 flights called off following more than 1,000 the previous day. Major airports in Atlanta, Chicago, Charlotte, and Newark were among those seeing the heaviest disruptions. Staffing shortages at radar centers and control towers are worsening the situation. Many air traffic controllers who have gone without paychecks for nearly a month are working mandatory overtime 6 days a week, according to the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. Some have even taken second jobs to make ends meet. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy warned that if the shutdown continues, even more flight reductions could be necessary. Experts say the impact isn't limited to passengers. Higher shipping costs and disruptions to tourism, manufacturing, and local economies could ripple across the country. Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa arrived in the U.S. on Saturday ahead of his meeting with President Trump on Monday. It's the first ever visit by a Syrian president since the country's independence in 1946. Washington removed al-Sharaa from a terrorist blacklist a day before his arrival. Here's more.
Monday's meeting between al-Sharaa and President Donald Trump marks the second round of talks between the two leaders. Al-Sharaa will use the upcoming meeting to push the U.S. to repeal sanctions permanently, seeking long-term investment in Syria. Back in May, during a visit to Saudi Arabia, President Trump announced that he would lift decades-old sanctions. Meanwhile, Syria is widely expected to officially join the U.S.-led coalition of about 80 countries against the terrorist organization known as the Islamic State.
They're about to sign the de-ISIS coalition letter. I think Foreign Minister Shabani may talk about it tomorrow, which is a huge step. Join 88 other countries in a de-ISIS coalition, for Syria to do this after the Assad regime is remarkable, and it's really due to President Trump.
On Saturday, the Syrian foreign minister shared a video on social media that showed al-Shura playing basketball with U.S. military personnel. 2 decades ago, Ahmad al-Shura was held in a U.S.-run detention center in Iraq after joining al-Qaeda militants fighting against American forces there. Washington removed him from its terrorism blacklist on Friday.
Next, China suspended an array of export control measures it imposed on October 9th, including curbs on some rare earth materials and equipment, as well as lithium battery materials.
China suspended expanded export controls on rare earths materials and equipment on Friday. The country's Commerce Ministry said increased curbs on lithium battery and superhard materials were also stopped. Beijing had imposed the measures just under a month ago, but it said Friday's suspensions were effective immediately and would apply through to November next year. The announcement confirmed and formalized an agreement reached after US President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping agreed a trade truce last month. Industry sources had earlier told Reuters China has begun designing a new rare earth licensing regime. They added it could speed up shipments but likely won't lead to a complete rollback of restrictions as hoped for by Washington. The sources said Chinese authorities told some rare earth exporters they will be able to apply for new streamlined permits in the future. The export curbs have become Beijing's strongest leverage in its trade rivalry with Washington. China produces more than 90% of the world's processed rare earths and rare earth magnets. The ingredients are key for products ranging from cars to missiles.
And the U.S. is granting Hungary a one-year exemption from sanctions tied to Russian oil and gas, following a direct appeal from Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. During his meeting with President Trump at the White House on Friday, Orban explained why Hungary still depends on Russian oil and what it would take to change that.
So when we discuss that issue, you should separate the gas and the oil. On the gas issue, which is very important for us, 90% of the Hungarian households based on heating system based on gas. So we have only one pipeline delivering gas to Hungary, which is the main pipeline, the Turkish one. Oil is another issue. So oil is coming from the Druzhba pipeline, which is the main supply, and that is a Croatian one, which is the secondary and supplementary pipeline. We would like to convince the Croatian government to enlarge it and make it possible to deliver more. Under these circumstances, it cannot be the main pipeline. It's just supplementary. But later on, with some big investments, it could serve better the interest of Hungary.
Orban's comments came as President Trump seeks to pressure Russia over its war in Ukraine while avoiding tensions with Hungary. The country has continued buying Russian oil despite criticism from NATO and European Union members. The White House confirmed the one-year exemption Friday. According to U.S. officials, this is a short-term and targeted policy aimed at safeguarding Hungary's energy supply while Washington continues sanctioning Russian oil. Joining me now to discuss the U.S.-Hungary energy deal is Rod Martin, founder and CEO of Martin Capital, and Kervin Okun, a former intelligence professional with direct experience in U.S.-Russia relations. During the first Trump administration, he participated in an overt anti-Russia campaign and now hosts the geopolitical intelligence podcast, This Week Explained. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Kervin, the U.S. says its waiver for Hungary will last 1 year, but Budapest says it's indefinite. Help us make sense of this.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. Very important discussion and for the people of Hungary, I would say. So far, right now, if you trust the reporting and the analysis that I trust, is that this is for 1 year with a supplemental flow for the future. So as of right now, we're looking at a 1 year reprieve from sanctions. It's very important because Orban is going through an election season, right? So we've got April elections coming up in Hungary, and this is something that was very important to the Hungarian people and that Orban needed to get from the Trump administration. And really, it's going to save the Hungarian people a ton of money, but it's also going to protect them through this winter season as well.
And staying with that, Rod, how important is Russian oil and gas to the landlocked nation of Hungary?
Well, you just hit it on the head. They're a landlocked country in the middle. They really don't have any good options for the time being. We can't just go in and build an LNG terminal in a place that doesn't have ocean access. Now, could we build one in Croatia and pipe LNG up to Hungary? Yes, and there is an existing pipeline through there that is useful as a supplemental source of supply, but certainly not to cover all the needs of the country. So Hungary really needs this in the same way that Slovakia needs this, perhaps a bit more. And so this is the right thing to do to help keep them on side, help keep them in the right direction. And you'll notice the rest of the deal is that the president got them to commit to some pretty significant purchases from the United States, including a bunch of small modular reactors. That puts money and jobs in the United States. It also lessens Hungary's dependency.
Kervin, what signal does this deal send to neighboring Russia and Ukraine and the rest of Europe, for that matter?
Well, I think what the rest of Europe is saying is that this is a bad deal. But look, the rest of Europe has been doing this as well. They've been bypassing sanctions in a few ways, purchasing Russian oil. Other nations are doing this. Look, this is a diplomatic win for President Trump, and I think a lot of people, especially some within other media sources, do not like when Trump gets a victory here. The Hungarian people needed this. My partner on the other side there was astute in his analysis of this situation. But what does this mean for Ukraine specifically? I don't see that this means much for Ukraine. Ukraine is still getting support from the United States. Trump is still putting pressure on Russia. This is a moment to protect the Hungarian people. And what does this signal to Russia? It is that if you come to a deal with U.S. President Trump and it is a deal in good faith, you are going to get support. And so this might be a trigger to Russian President Vladimir Putin that come to the negotiating table, signals a signing of a deal for a ceasefire, and maybe you can get some sanctions relief.
And at the same time, Russia does indeed benefit from this. They have another buyer of oil that they might not have otherwise. So, Rod, Hungary is one of Europe's largest buyers of Russian oil. What relief do you think this waiver will give to the Russian economy? How significant is this?
Not that significant. If we are able to dislodge India and at least in part China, and I'd guess that China's a lot tougher nut to crack on that than India, the Russian economy is just getting trashed. And that's on two sides. First, you have very, very limited purchases of Russian energy now, and that's only going to shrink. Second, they're selling it at about $35 a barrel, which is about half global market price. And it's certainly a lot less than they need to run the Russian government. The government is highly dependent on these oil and gas sales, much more so than the Russian economy as a whole. So this is a drop in the bucket for Russia, but it's essential for Hungary. And especially, as I said, moving them more toward nuclear lessens their dependency on Russia or anybody else outside going forward. And that's going to matter too.
So we're talking about the economic impacts of this move on Russia, but what does it mean, Kervin, politically and militarily?
Yeah, I said
politically and militarily.
Sorry, Kervin.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No worries. Yeah. I'd start politically. Politically, like I said, this means that if you come to the negotiating table with President Trump in good faith, there are going to be deals that are going to be struck. Militarily, look, Russia is in a military economy. The purchasing of gas at 35%, $35 or 35 cents on the dollar, that's not going to do anything. The reason Vladimir Putin will not come to the negotiating table and will not accept a ceasefire is twofold. One, he wants all of Ukraine, and two, or at least every part of Ukraine that Russia has now controlled militarily. And the second part is because this is a wartime economy. In a wartime, as soon as the war ends, the economy will collapse. Russia will be forced to pay certain aspects of this to rebuilding Ukraine, whether they win or not. That is going to collapse the Russian government. This is a war of attrition. Putin thinks he can win a war of attrition, and that is what he's going to try to do.
Ron, how are these oil sanctions playing out, not just for Russia, like we discussed, but for the rest of the world?
Well, the European Union has spoken with forked tongue on this for years. They're finally getting their act together. And there are a few stragglers like Hungary, like Slovakia, that actually have to have their own special carve out. But in general, what is true is that the European Union has sent twice as much money to Moscow in energy purchases since the beginning of the war as they've sent to Kiev in aid, which is just absurd. That is finally ending. So that's actually a really big deal. The other thing that's a really big deal that must not be missed is that Ukraine is very self-consciously targeting Russian oil production. They had taken 17% of Russian refinery capacity offline as of the beginning of October. They're continuing those strikes. That could reach as much as 35% in reasonably rapid order. That actually puts the Russian economy in a situation where it can't supply domestic need. It certainly can't sell enough to keep the war machine going. So Russia really needs, they haven't decided to do it yet, but they ultimately need a deal with the United States that involves a lot of Western investment back into Russia. They're going to have to pay for that.
And so, we're talking about the impacts on Russia. Kervin, during this meeting with President Trump on Friday at the cabinet, Viktor Orban said that essentially it's almost inevitable for victory for Ukrainian victory, or at least for peace between these two parties, Ukraine and Russia. But it depends on whether or not the West can unify. And he stated that the rest of Europe has a sort of different approach to how to end this war. They think that he said they think that Ukraine should be able to push Russia back and win militarily. And he said basically it's possible, but so are miracles. So what do you make of his statements? Do you think that the West is so ununified on this?
Yeah, I think some parts of the West are a little ununified now. I think, look, we want an end to this war. We meaning the globe. Right? I'm not talking about the global West or the global South. We all want an end to this war. And so who's going to agree to what? What does a Ukrainian victory look like? I think, early on in the discussions of this conflict, a Ukrainian defeat entirely was seen as possible. There were assessments that was likely, if not highly likely, that Ukraine would lose all of its sovereignty. We're not seeing that right now. Can Ukraine, to its people, send back a message that says, "Look, I know we lost eastern parts of our borders, but we won this war. We took on the big bear that is the Russian Federation and the Russian military, and without the complete support of Western nations, we really did win this war." That's the miracle here. Does Ukraine have to push back Russia? I don't think so. I think we can come to a deal here, unfortunately, having to give up eastern parts. That's funny for me to say as someone who's not in Ukraine and who's not a Ukrainian, but I do think that's just the reality on the ground right now.
Rod, final thoughts?
Look, a Ukrainian breakout is possible. Maybe they can take back some territory. Maybe they can take back all of it. But I agree that that's in the miracle category. But at the same time, Russia has lost this war. Russia was seeking regime change in Kiev, which they were going to bring about by quickly capturing the country. That fell apart on them in the first couple weeks. So ultimately, you've got to get to some kind of negotiated settlement. Putin's problem is that he promised his oligarchs things that he cannot deliver, and he is personally endangered if he makes peace and makes that a permanent, concrete fact. So he's going to fight as long as he thinks he can get away with it. But the truth is, Russia's position is weakening every single day, and it's not just on the battleground.
All right, Rod Martin and Kervin Oakwin, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, the Supreme Court heard arguments challenging President Trump's tariffs. What's the national security implication if the High Court does indeed overturn those tariffs? That and more after the break.
According to ancient Chinese medicine, purslane is considered a medicinal herb and is used to help lower cholesterol, improve vascular functions, and prevent diabetes. Perilla seeds can nourish the lungs and spleen. It is used to treat asthma and improve pulmonary functions. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds from Hwangmae Mountain in South Korea. It contains over 90% of omega-3, 6, 7, and 9, the highest concentration possible without chemical additives. The soft gel is made of natural seaweed. It is 100% organic and vegan. Both adults and children can take it with peace of mind. Ancient recipes were passed down from heaven to bring prosperity and longevity. Puritang green vegetable omega-3.
Hunger in America is a crisis. Let's end it together. Our America. Built on hard work, determination, and grit. Sometimes the days run long, but hope, it never runs out, even when the food does, for America's veterans, working parents, even kids. Because in every corner of every town, even yours, millions of hard-working neighbors are facing a hunger crisis, many for the very first time. In this land of plenty, affording food shouldn't require second jobs and third shifts or choosing between your groceries and bills. Today, you can help change that. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, less than 63 cents a day, to help every neighbor get the food they urgently need. Because taking care of each other is what makes America strong. We're Feeding America, not just a name, but in action, working with over 200 local food banks like the ones in your community, and demand is soaring.
You go to the grocery store, you spend $100, and $100 is a new $20 bill.
Even with 2 full-time jobs, it's hard to make ends meet.
These are tough times, but when we stand together, we become the very best of a strong America. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Just $19 a month can feed a family today. And your first gift can double an impact. Plus, we'll send you this free canvas bag as a reminder of the hope you're delivering.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Because you're not just giving food, you're fueling resilience for people across the nation. You're feeding America. Call or go online today to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double an impact.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court heard arguments on President Trump's authority to issue emergency tariffs. What implications will the High Court's ruling have on our nation? NTD's Steve Lance spoke to former federal prosecutor Jim Trusty for insight.
The justices had really tough questions for both sides. How are you reading this case based on the line of questioning? Are there any indications when the justices are sort of giving both sides a hard time?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's tough because these guys are professional interlocutors, and there's times where there's devil's advocacy, and they can be pretty good at masking where they're coming from. But I think this is going to be a problematic case for the administration. I think thought that before, and really hearing what some of Justice Coney Barrett and Justice Roberts had to say today was pretty worrisome in terms of the use of this particular law for tariffs. You know, this is a law that's based on the idea that in emergencies, Congress will delegate the power to control trade to the president. And it's very unclear, and that's what this argument was all about, very unclear as to whether the emergency power to regulate commerce means you can levy taxes or tariffs across the board against a whole bunch of different countries. So I think they have real issues with what the intent of this statute, this International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, whether it's supposed to allow you to do tariffs in the first place, and then is it really an emergency if you're imposing tariffs on almost every country in the world. You know, it's one thing for Canada, Mexico, China to say this is an emergency based on fentanyl. But when you get down to, you know, Trinidad, Tobago, and Australia, and you're saying, I just want to make trade fair, that sounds like something that creates this separation of powers issue that the court seems to be leaning against.
That's just it, Jim. You know, when it appears to be perhaps somewhat subjective, yet you have very pressing issues on the table. Like you said, the fentanyl crisis. Trump says that he used the tariffs to leverage India and Pakistan to stop, you know, potentially both nuclear powers from a major clash. And then, of course, China that infiltrates the United States in various asymmetric ways that we can't do over there. And so another way we can push back on them is tariffs. Are there any other avenues to protect our sovereignty in these particular cases?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't pretend to have a perfect answer for it. I mean, look, there are other areas of delegation that you might be able to use instead of the IEPA, the Emergency Economics Power Act. And frankly, you know, I think the safest bet here, if you could pull it off politically, would be to have Congress backing it up every step of the way. You know, Congress, if that's where the primary authority to levy tariffs is, you know, have them kind of cleaning up behind the elephants a little bit, you know, as the parade marches on of, I think, pretty undeniable success in using tariffs without harming the American economy. If Congress would somehow validate it on the back end, maybe that would be a way to keep this in place. But you're right to point to the problem, which is, you know, this has been used apparently quite successfully in a number of different avenues. And the disruption by saying he no longer can use this statute, does not have this power, has to give money back to importers. It could be a very disruptive moment where I guess only if you're a complete free trade person that doesn't believe in tariffs are you going to be happy with that outcome.
And I mean, I don't know about the Supreme Court's daily briefings. Do they get an intel briefing that perhaps could open their eyes to some of this? I don't know. But you raise, you know, another important question with regard to the economy, another subjective item. Trump's, you know, legal team warning that a ruling against him could have catastrophic consequences for the nation's economic health. In simple terms, can you help explain this, and would it be viable for that reason?
Well, I mean, I think the starting point is the court is going to view this as, you know, kind of a self-created problem. If they rule against the administration, they're going to say, yes, this is disruptive as heck, and it's going to create problems where the Treasury has to calculate refunds to a number of importers who have essentially paid the tax. But it's a strange scenario. I mean, you've had, you know, months of these, probably billions and billions, at least in the dozens, if not hundreds of billions, that have been imposed by way of these tariffs. And suddenly you're being told Treasury has to let go of all that. I know the Supreme Court cares about practical consequences, but I think from the questioning, again, from Roberts and from Coney Barrett, asking questions like, you know, to John Sauer, the representative for the administration, you're saying that this president under IEPA can basically levy taxes for every country in the world for unlimited times and unlimited amounts. I mean, that type of question tells me they realize that the separation of powers issue is so powerful to them that they're not going to care too much, or they're not going to be overwhelmed by the practical consequences. So, you know, we'll see, but didn't look like a great day for the administration.
We know the CCP has been out in full-fledged on K Street in Korea and really lobbying against these tariffs. Now, if the court rules against Trump, would the government need to refund the $195 billion, as it's being reported, that it's been collected so far since September in tariff revenue?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big devil in the details. It does suggest that that's a possible outcome, and how that gets calculated, how that gets distributed, when that gets distributed, seems like there's going to be a cottage industry of litigation that grows up, that blows up after that.
And Jim, how would such a ruling affect our national security? And do you think it might prompt some of these foreign governments that we've made close deals with or solidified deals with to perhaps renegotiate some of these recent trade agreements?
Yeah, it does give them that leverage, and that's a worrisome moment. And again, maybe the force of personality wins out and President Trump can keep all those deals in place. but it's going to be a real temptation, excuse me, and a real opportunity for some of our less friendly countries to say, well, you've been undercut by your own court. Let's start from scratch.
Now, Jim, I want to turn our attention to the Big Apple, New York City's new mayor-elect, Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani. President Trump posted on Truth Social after Mamdani's win, saying, and so it begins. Just, 4 short words with an exclamation point. Can the president withhold federal funding or deploy the National Guard there? And could he increase ICE operations within the city? How do you see this all playing out?
Probably with a lot of litigation and a lot of lawyers, unfortunately. I mean, look at Chicago. That might be a bit of a preview. And so, look, the National Guard part is certainly inflammatory. It leads to litigation. I think it actually leads to a reduction in crime just based on deterrence, because they're not there to make arrests. They're there to support other federal agents. Whether he plays that card or not, I'm not sure. But, a surge in federal investigations and federal resources being poured into any particular locality is completely fair game. And most fair-minded politicians would realize, hey, if they want to give us more ICE, more DEA, more FBI to take on street crime in our city, we'll take it. So that one, I think, not only is it constitutionally protected, there's no such thing as sanctuary cities in the eyes of the Constitution. But I think practically that's a move that would be hard for any mayor to really thwart. He can complain, he can moan, he can sue, he can find some friendly judges, maybe like they did in Chicago at first. But eventually that's going to bubble up to an appellate court that says, you do not have the power as a local governor or mayor to thwart federal law enforcement taking place in your jurisdiction. So I think the president has some options that are safe in terms of trying to fight crime. In terms of funding, the shutdown might be a part of this, where you can kind of use the shutdown as a vehicle for also thwarting particularized local spending. But at the end of the day, the president's power over the purse is very limited. And when he wants to fight, when he wants to have rescission of funding that's already been delegated by Congress, you're limited to essentially the same fiscal year. So if you really want to get the money rescinded, you have to go through Congress and get them to say, we take everything back from last year. That's a tough sell. But if you have the ability of stuff that's in stream to delay it, you're allowed to do that for several months at a time. So maybe the president does that on some of the, macroeconomic ideas in terms of grants and spending that's in New York City. But I'm not sure. I think he might have been commenting more broadly that New York has actually succumbed to the foolishness of putting a socialist in power. And it was more of a ruining the day for New York than any sort of announcement of a plan.
Coming up, are some sugars riskier than others? And how do we know which foods contain hidden sugars? Vital Signs' Brendan Fallon gets insights from a leading expert in obesity and diabetes prevention after the break.
I trod on my glasses yesterday, and I had to pay up front for a new pair that I can't even pick up for another 10 days. So I looked for another way, and I found Select Specs. I ordered online. My new glasses just arrived this morning, and I can pay over the next few weeks. This is the way to buy glasses.
See now, pay later with Select Specs. Next day delivery and deferred payment options only at selectspecs.com.
Get your home ready for the holidays with Black Friday deals at Mathis Home. They have over 100 dining sets in stock with the styles you like at incredible values. Take your pick. This cottage set has 4 storage drawers, the table, bench, and 4 side chairs, just $7.99. This marble top set comes with 4 chairs and a bench covered in a soft velvet fabric. Get all 6 pieces for just $7.99 with fast delivery absolutely free. Get the lowest prices of the year with Black Friday deals at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night. Homeless young people are afraid and alone. Your monthly donation right now will show them they are loved and safe.
I have no words to express how Covenant House changed my life.
Call or go online now and give just $19 a month. We'll send you this comforting blanket as a reminder of the difference you're making in a young person's life. Call or go online now to safeplacetosleep.org.
Welcome back to NTD. I'm joined in studio by NTD health correspondent and host of Vital Signs, Brendan Fallon. Vital Signs offers natural and nutritional ways of optimizing our health. Brendan, it's nice to see you.
Good to see you, Chris.
What do you have for us?
Well, today I had the opportunity to again speak to Dr. Jason Fung. He's a fantastic doctor. He's done so much to kind of get out this message that people need to reduce carbs and try things like intermittent fasting to improve their health, because this is such a central thing. The amount of glucose that we're getting in and other sugars, it's really impacting a lot of people's health. That's why diabetes is so high, why obesity is so high. So I was talking to him about, we know that sugar is a problem for many people. It contributes to obesity, to diabetes, other problems. But what is the difference between these two main types of sugar, like glucose and fructose?
Yeah, and we have a clip of him explaining that.
That's right. This first clip, he's talking about the relative impacts of glucose and fructose on the body.
All right, let's watch it.
Fructose is actually quite dangerous. So table sugar and high fructose corn syrup. And fructose is actually quite dangerous because of the way it's metabolized. So when you eat glucose, so you eat a slice of bread, that's 100% glucose. So therefore, your blood glucose will go up higher. However, all the cells in your body can metabolize that glucose. So your brain can use it, your heart can use it, your liver can use it, your kidneys can use it. So all, your body's cells are using up some of this glucose, because remember, the glucose is a source of energy. Your body can use it as a source of energy. If you take fructose, it's not going to raise your blood glucose because that's fructose, not glucose. However, none of the cells of your body can actually use that fructose. So your muscles, your biceps and triceps and so on, they can't actually use that fructose as a source of energy, the same way they could use the glucose that came in from that slice of bread. So all of it goes right into the liver and sort of puts a lot of pressure on the liver. The liver has to turn this fructose either into glucose, or it has to turn it into fat, which can cause fatty liver and then lead to this sort of cascade of insulin resistance. So the fructose, which is the table sugar and high fructose corn syrup, is actually, I think, much more dangerous because there's no way your body can use it in the same way. So if you weigh 180 pounds, all 180 pounds of your body can use glucose. Whereas if you eat fructose, none of that 180 pounds can. Only the 5 or 6 pounds of liver can actually metabolize that amount of fructose. So fructose is actually much more dangerous.
So he's saying that things like bread are a little better than, candy, soda, and so on.
Yeah, well, I think when we talk about hidden sugar, I think bread is a big one, because you don't think bread isn't sweet, so you think, well, this isn't going to be a problem. But one question I asked him, what if you looking at bread versus Coke, and Coke in America has high fructose corn syrup as opposed to cane sugar. So this is fructose, it's high in fructose. Which is going to elevate your glucose more? And surprisingly, the Coke is so much sweeter, but actually it's the bread, because the bread has all this glucose in it. So you're going to see a spike in your glucose when you eat the bread, as opposed to drinking the Coke.
Interesting. And we could see a change with the Coke soon, switching from high fructose corn syrup to cane sugar.
Yeah, I think that overall that would be good news, but it's not going to make the Coke healthier.
Yeah. Healthy Coke. That sounds like an oxymoron.
Definitely. Yeah, that would be a huge development in health to have a healthy Coke.
Yeah. And we have another clip, right, from Dr. Fung?
He makes the point, Dr. Fung makes the point, this issue is so simple, and that's why it's eluded so many health experts and like people. The idea of actually improving health, losing weight, avoiding diabetes, it's so simple as to just avoiding foods that are high in different types of sugar. Fructose has its own problem. It's not necessarily going to spike blood glucose, but you still want to avoid that. But knowing how much glucose is in certain foods is very important. And here he's talking about the glycemic index as a way to judge that. I mean, and another question I asked Dr. Fung, if you're comparing, like, say, drinking Coke, which we were just saying has high fructose corn syrup, as opposed to eating apples, what kind of difference are you going to see there? I mean, apples being also containing high amount of fructose. His point was, well, the issue is that both of these contain fructose, but you're not going to overdose on apples, right? I mean, you drink orange juice, you might drink apple juice. And that's a concentrated amount of this fructose in it. But generally, if you're eating an apple, you're eating an orange, you're not getting this in high dose form. So that's the issue. That's kind of the main differentiation. It's actually the same molecule, he says. Same molecule in Coke. The same fructose molecule that's in Coke is the same that's in an apple. But it's the quantity that makes the difference.
Plus, I mean, apples, orange juice, and so on, these things have, vitamin benefits. And all of this ties back to diabetes.
That's right. And one of the really groundbreaking things that Dr. Fung talks about is the whole idea that the development of diabetes, the development of insulin resistance, where the cells aren't taking an insulin, which is needed to get the glucose in there. We all need glucose for energy, but there's this kind of mainstay idea that there's a malfunction, something's gone wrong with the cells. The cells are malfunctioning, that's why they're becoming insulin resistant. They're not letting the glucose can't get in. All this glucose is building up in the bloodstream, and it's having a toxic effect. That's what's leading to diabetes. His point, he kind of advances the argument, no, that's not the reason. The reason is the cells are already too packed full of glucose. We're eating too much glucose. The cells are packed full of it. That's why they can't get any more glucose in. That's why it's backing up into the bloodstream. So it's a very different take on what's causing this issue.
Interesting. And then I know he said earlier that fructose can only be metabolized in the liver, whereas glucose can be metabolized all over the body. So you have the liver taking on all this extra fructose, and then you get fatty liver from that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's important to not just think, well, I'm eating fruit, I'm having fruit juice, so it's healthy. Fruit is healthy, because it also has its consequence, eating like high levels of fructose. And we're not just talking about fruit. There's high levels of fructose in a lot of processed foods, a lot of confectionery. The really important point, I think, to take away is to check which kind of sugar is in the food you're eating and check the quantity.
All right, Brendan Fallon, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
To see that full Vital Signs interview with Dr. Fung, just go to your web browser and enter ept.ms/sugar-risk. Coming up, Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani has won the mayoral race in New York City. What does this policy mean for the future of the city? A New York legal analyst weighs in after the break.
That truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. Shenyun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
Silver is the precious metal of the future. Judge Napolitano here. Since 2020, the silver price has risen as much as 190%. Why? In each of the last 4 years, rising demand for solar and electric vehicles alone has put silver supply into a deficit. But now there's another industry. AI, data centers, robots, and quantum computing could require so much silver that silver supplies could be obliterated.
Could silver rise another 190% within 5 years? Find out in this new report, The AI Revolution.
I bought silver and my investment is up 85%. With billions being poured into AI, it makes sense to consider silver.
Call Lear Capital to get your free report, The AI Revolution, and see why it could bring record high silver. And with a qualified purchase, get up to $20,000 in bonus silver. Call 800-885-6000. 800-885-6000. 800-885-6000.
Don't wait. Call now to find out about our Medicare plan.
Why do we have to sit through so many Medicare commercials this time of year? It's endless.
Good question, Edith. I'm glad you asked. We see so many commercials this time of year because it's the only time, other than special circumstances, when Medicare recipients can change their plan for Part C. Original Medicare only covers Parts A and B, but a Medicare Advantage plan has additional benefits that Original Medicare doesn't offer.
So now's the time to fill those spaces?
That's right, Archie. And every year, there are changes to what benefits you may receive from your Part C plan. Call right now to find out what plan best suits your needs.
It's easy, don't delay. Pick up the phone and call today.
Call now for your free Medicare review.
1-833-469-1754. 1-833-469-1754.
You may now return to your regularly scheduled programming.
MixFix is a custom formulated, full-spectrum organic detox product to achieve better health and overall function. It's not just the longevity of life, but quality of life. There are other products out there, but they lack the quality that MixFix provides. Detoxifying your body 3 to 4 times per year may be the single most important thing you can do, and our detox mix was designed specifically to do it and do it right. Just scan the QR code and detox your body today.
Welcome back. Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani has won the New York City mayoral race. What could be the economic impact of Mamdani's policies? NTD's Don Ma tapped Bobby Ann Cox, a New York attorney and legal analyst, for insight.
So, Bobby Ann, can I get your comments on Mamdani getting half the vote, 50%? And he said in his victory speech that he emphasized a mandate for change. How do you see all this?
Yeah, well, the laundry list I was just running down is exactly the change he is envisioning for New York. He wants the wealthy to pay for all of the services across the board for those that do not fall in that tax bracket. He garnered 50% of the vote, as you said. And, in his acceptance speech last night, he credited his win to all these different, people that live in New York City from various countries around the world. He did not give credit to actual, native-born Americans, native-born New Yorkers for his win. So he obviously appealed to the foreign-born New Yorkers, and he said it in his speech last night. He actually is a recent citizen of our country. He only became a citizen in 2018. Even though his family moved here when he was 7 years old. And he's still a citizen of Uganda, which is his home country where he was born and raised until he was 7. So he has dual citizenship, and which, questions allegiance. And he has made it very clear that, he will take from the rich and give to the lesser, well-endowed New Yorkers. And it's very concerning. He really is proposing radical change, which I think many realize is negative radical change, not positive, because it will just plunge New York City further into debt. And you will see a mass exodus. I mean, just massive numbers of New Yorkers fleeing New York City. And when that tax base leaves, he's not going to have many people left to tax. So this is going to be a huge problem that we see going forward.
So I want to get your thoughts on what you think potentially whether there might be legal challenges that could face Mamdani when he's trying to implement the policies that you just mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. He's going to be facing, I'm sure, many a legal challenge in the months and years to come. I mean, for example, he said he wants to provide free buses in New York City. Well, the mayor does not control the MTA, right? The Metropolitan Transportation Authority is controlled by New York State at the state level, not the mayor at the city level. So if he wants to make buses free, which, by the way, would cost approximately, upwards of $500 million a year, that would have to come from Albany, from the New York State legislature and the governor. That's not something that Mamdani has the power to do. Same thing with, if he's going to try to freeze the rent, and do rent stabilization laws or whatever he has planned, that's going to have to come from Albany. That's not something that the mayor of New York City has unilateral power to do. If he starts to do these things, I am sure he's going to be faced with legal challenges. Same thing with the raising of the taxes. It's approximated that if he does all of these freebie programs that he's talking about, freezing the rent, free childcare for all, free buses, transportation. If he does actually try to implement all of this, it's going to cost New York City an additional $9 billion with a B, $9 billion a year to implement these things. So, where is he going to get that money from? He can't unilaterally raise taxes on the wealthiest New York City dwellers. That's not a power that he has. That has to come from Albany. I'm sure we are going to be seeing many legal challenges coming at him.
Okay, so Bobby Ann, while I have you here, I really wanted to get your thoughts on something I noticed about the ballot. So Mamdani's name appears twice on the top of the ballot, right? And Cuomo is, sort of off to the side of the ballot. And I even saw Eric Adams' name still on the ballot, even though he's not running anymore in that election. I'm just wondering if there's anything to be said about that.
Yeah, so I know that was a big question that was, racing across social media platforms yesterday. So what happens in New York State, this is statewide, not just in the city, is that since the 1940s, you can cross-endorse a candidate. Meaning that more than one political party in our state can endorse the same person for office. And so when that happens, you will see that person's name on the ballot more than once. You'll see them listed for each party that they garnered the endorsement from. So in the case of Mamdani, you saw him under the Democrat and under the Working Families parties. Same thing. If you get the on the other side, if you get the endorsement from, let's say, the Republican Party and the Conservative Party, you will then see your name on the ballot twice under each of those. So it is something that is, quote unquote, legal in New York State because the law passed in the 1940s. But I understand the outrage from many people saying that it's unfair because if you see, just psychologically, if you see somebody's name on the ballot more than once, it makes you think that the person is either more important or more powerful or more likely to win. So I do understand that concern. And then as far as Eric Adams being on the ballot, even though he dropped out of the race weeks ago, that is because there is a deadline to actually drop out of a political race. And he missed that deadline. So when he dropped out, the deadline had passed and therefore the ballots were already in print. And so his name still appeared on the ballots, which was probably confusing to a lot of people because it's not common knowledge that there's a deadline. And even if you drop out after the deadline, your name is still going to be on the ballot. And as far as where you saw Andrew Cuomo's name on the ballot, again, that is all dictated by policy and law. The top names, the first party is going to be the party whose candidate garnered the most results or the highest number of votes in the last election. So that's why you couldn't really find his name. It was kind of tucked in the corner and he wasn't in one of the major Democrat or Republican parties.
Coming up, we speak with a travel blogger about how to navigate government shutdown-related flight cancellations amid the busy holiday travel season. Stay tuned.
Is deep sea fish oil really healthy?
Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3.
Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health.
Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back in stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regular $119.98, only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first time and the only time ever, get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and designer gusset. Queens $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now.
The impact of a meal goes well beyond feeding our bodies. Because when people are fed, futures are nourished. Everyone deserves to live a full life. And with your help, together we can end hunger. Join the movement at feedingamerica.org/act now.
Picture this, the heart of Manhattan, full of energy, movement, and life. Now imagine bringing that same vitality into your home with trusted health insights for your body, mind, and soul. Every week, Vital Signs dives into health issues that matter the most. The foods that strengthen your immune system, the exercises that keep you moving, the mindfulness practices that calm your mind, plus expert advice from doctors and health leaders you can trust. This isn't just another health show. It's real insight designed to keep you informed, inspired, and in motion. So whether you're starting your day with focus or winding down with balance, Vital Signs brings health and vitality straight into your living room.
There are real
Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. President Trump urging Republicans to redirect federal money that currently goes to health insurance companies under the Affordable Care Act and send it directly to individuals. More than 1,700 flights have been canceled today, the third day since shutdown-related FAA cuts hit on Friday. Our travel blogger guest explains the situation and provides tips on how to handle it during the busy holiday travel season. From an al-Qaeda fighter to a White House guest, Syria's new president will meet with President Trump in the White House on Monday. Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani has won the New York City mayoral election. What does his policy mean for the future of the city? Investigations are looking into 13 cases of infant botulism across 10 states. All 13 infants were hospitalized after consuming the formula, and a recall has begun.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Senators held a weekend session as the government shutdown stretched into its 40th day today. But there were little signs of any progress. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says we're only a handful of votes away from reopening the government. Democratic leaders are pushing for an extension of subsidies under the Affordable Care Act as a condition to end the shutdown. President Trump said on Truth Social that Obamacare is the worst health care for the highest price. He also urged Republicans to redirect federal money that currently goes to health insurance companies under the Affordable Care Act and send it directly to individuals. Regarding tariffs, he also posted on Truth Social that people that are against tariffs are fools, adding that a dividend of at least $2,000 a person could be paid to Americans. A late-night decision on Friday from the Supreme Court on food stamps. It allowed the federal government to put a pause on fully funding SNAP in November. The court's decision pauses the lower court's order that forced the Trump administration to fully fund the food stamps program for November. The Trump administration had already committed to partially funding SNAP. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson issued the pause to give an appeals court more time to make a judgment on the government's appeal. She is assigned to handle emergency appeals from the First Circuit Court. The Supreme Court has not weighed in on the merits of this case. More than 2,500 flights were canceled this weekend as the FAA cut air traffic. This left travelers across the U.S. facing widespread disruptions amid the ongoing government shutdown. Officials warned the situation could worsen into the Thanksgiving holidays if the shutdown continues. According to FlightAware, the cancellations escalated yesterday with more than 1,500 flights called off following more than 1,000 the previous day. Major airports in Atlanta, Chicago, Charlotte, and Newark were among those seeing the heaviest disruptions. Staffing shortages at radar centers and control towers are worsening the situation. Many air traffic controllers who have gone without paychecks for nearly a month are working mandatory overtime 6 days a week. According to the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, some even have taken some second jobs to make ends meet. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy warned that if the shutdown continues, even more flight reductions could be necessary. Experts say the impact isn't limited to passengers. Higher shipping costs and disruptions to tourism, manufacturing, and local economies could ripple across the country. Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa arrived in the U.S. on Saturday ahead of his meeting with President Trump on Monday. It's the first ever visit by a Syrian president since the country's independence in 1946. Washington removed al-Sharaa from a terrorist blacklist a day before his arrival. Here's more.
Monday's meeting between al-Sharaa and President Donald Trump marks the second round of talks between the two leaders. Al-Sharaa will use the upcoming meeting to push the U.S. to repeal sanctions permanently, seeking long-term investment in Syria. Back in May, during a visit to Saudi Arabia, President Trump announced that he would lift decades-old sanctions. Meanwhile, Syria is widely expected to officially join the U.S.-led coalition of about 80 countries against the terrorist organization known as the Islamic State.
They're about to sign the de-ISIS coalition letter. I think Foreign Minister Shabani may talk about it tomorrow, which is a huge step. Join 88 other countries in a de-ISIS coalition. For Syria to do this after the Assad regime is remarkable, and it's really due to President Trump.
On Saturday, the Syrian foreign minister shared a video on social media that showed al-Sharaa playing basketball with U.S. military personnel. 2 decades ago, Ahmad al-Sharaa was held in a U.S.-run detention center in Iraq after joining al-Qaeda militants fighting against American forces there. Washington removed him from its terrorism blacklist on Friday.
It was another busy week for the Trump administration, from a landmark Supreme Court hearing to new foreign policy deals and a sweeping health announcement. NTD's Daniel Monahan has your White House Week in Review.
Liberation Day.
The Supreme Court heard high-stakes arguments over the legality of President Trump's global tariffs.
Look at what President Trump has been able to do with the leverage and the power of tariffs. He's been able to sign peace deals all over the world and end global conflicts and literally save lives.
For nearly 3 hours, the justices probed whether Trump's reciprocal and fentanyl tariffs were authorized by a 1970s emergency powers law. President Trump met with Central Asian presidents at the White House. Kazakhstan officially agreed to join the Abraham Accords.
A tremendous country with a tremendous leader.
The country's president praised Trump for bringing common sense and tradition back to the United States.
You are the great leader, statesman, sent by heaven.
First Lady Melania Trump was named Fox Nation's Patriot of the Year for her work on behalf of children and families.
I applaud American dreamers and innovators who embrace originality.
President Trump announced a deal with Eli Lilly and Novartis to slash weight loss drug prices.
Nobody else could have done it, but I say that modestly.
The American public, because of this agreement, will lose 125 million pounds by this time next year. It is going to have dramatic effects on human health in this country.
The FBI confirmed 4 additional arrests linked to last week's alleged Halloween terror plot in Detroit.
The threat of terrorism is real. When Americans are threatened, we respond fast, focused, and together.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced a 10% reduction in flight capacity across major airports, citing staff shortages caused by the ongoing government shutdown.
This is about where is the pressure and how do we alleviate the pressure.
Donald J. Trump.
President Trump celebrated economic resilience at the America Business Forum this week. Trump addressed the victory of Zohran Mamdani in the election for mayor of New York City.
As I've warned for many years, our opponents are hell-bent on turning America into a communist Cuba or socialist Venezuela, and you see what happened to those places.
In other election news, Proposition 50 passed in California, giving Democrats the chance of picking up 5 more U.S. House seats.
What a night for the Democratic Party. A party that is in its ascendancy. A party that's on its toes, no longer on its heels.
President Trump had breakfast with Republican senators this week. He discussed the shutdown and urged them to terminate the filibuster.
It's the only way you can do it. And if you don't terminate the filibuster, you'll be in bad shape. We won't pass any legislation.
War Secretary Pete Hegseth announced the Department of War carried out more lethal strikes this week on vessels operated by alleged narco-terrorists. The United Nations Human Rights Chief has condemned the strikes as extrajudicial killing. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Coming up, Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani has won the mayoral race in New York City. What does his policy mean for the future of the city? A New York legal analyst weighs in after the break.
That truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. Shen Yun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
I go by Jackie. I'm 44 years old. I had 3 kids at the time and single mother. I was working 60 hours a week, still couldn't pay the bills, skip meals so that they could eat. It's been hard because one thing falls into place, 10 things fall out of place. I just can't do this alone and make it work.
1 in 5 children face hunger in America, and food costs are rising. But everyone needs nourishing food to thrive, and they can when we work together so our neighbors can feed their families. Call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Together, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks, dedicated volunteers, and the monthly support of people like you, we can fill plates with nutritious food for families across America.
One day my mother came over to my house and said, "There's a meeting at the pantry." I said, "Okay." And I went. There were some ladies in there. They were from the food bank. They asked several questions. Some of those were about me and my story, but it helped me to open up a little bit.
We're getting closer to the day when no one in America faces hunger, but we can't do it without you. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger, from coast to coast and in your own community. And when you give by credit card, we'll send you this exclusive canvas grocery bag to show you are a part of a movement of supporters working together to help end hunger.
I have people that I can trust. I have hope.
Please call now or make your monthly donation at helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
Ethan was shot in the head in his best friend's house with an unsecured gun. The father, the gun owner, he stored his 3 guns and bullets in a shoebox. That has to be the most horrific experience that a human could ever have.
Welcome back. A speeding car evading the police crashed into a crowded bar early Saturday. 4 people were killed and 11 injured in a district in Tampa, Florida, known for its nightlife and tourism. In a statement, the Tampa Police Department said an air patrol unit spotted the silver sedan driving recklessly on a freeway at about 12:40 a.m. That's after it was seen street racing in another neighborhood. Highway patrol officers disengaged as the vehicle sped toward historic Ybor City near downtown. The driver lost control and hit more than a dozen people outside the bar, Bradley's on 7th. 3 people died at the scene and a 4th died at a hospital as of Saturday afternoon. 2 people were hospitalized in critical condition. 7 were listed as stable and 2 had been treated and discharged, police said. On Saturday, authorities announced that federal and state health officials are investigating 13 cases of infant botulism in 10 states. This is linked to baby formula that was being recalled. By Heart, Inc. agreed to begin recalling 2 lots of the company's whole nutrition infant formula. All 13 infants were hospitalized after consuming the formula from 2 lots. The cases occurred in Arizona, California, Illinois, Minnesota, New Jersey, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Texas, and Washington. No deaths were reported. The FDA said it was investigating how the contamination happened and whether it affected any other products. Available online and through major retailers, the product accounted for an estimated 1% of national formula sales, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani has won the New York City mayoral race. What does his policy mean for the future of the city? NTD's Don Ma tapped Joshua Phillip, senior investigator, reporter for the Epoch Times, and host of Crossroads on Epoch TV for insight.
So let's talk about socialism, democratic socialism specifically. In your view, how do you feel about whether this has become more popular, more mainstream, or more widely accepted?
Well, you know, the Democrats right now are kind of in a difficult position. The Democratic Socialists of America is technically a third party, but they really tried to integrate themselves into the main line of the Democratic Party because they can't win elections. So what they've done over the years, they've infiltrated the Democratic Party, they run under the Democrat ticket, they put their candidates as Democrats, and the Democrats, they haven't really wanted to split their party on behalf of them. The DSA, Democratic Socialist of America elements, though, they represent the more extreme kind of progressive, some might call it, parts of the party. The things representing more outright socialism. The things representing, you know, gender politics, race politics, these are DSA issues. Whereas the old school Democrats used to be more like the big tent. If you go back to, you know, 90s, 2000s, look where the Democrats were. Like Trump used to be a Democrat. RFK Jr., maybe he's still a Democrat. Guys like Joe Rogan used to be Democrats. And so you do have kind of this big tent, 80% in the middle, that represents what the Democratic Party used to be. And some argue that the extreme positions of the DSA, they might work in local elections, but it might be a real gamble for Democrats to run with.
Okay, so how would you classify Zohran Mamdani's policies?
Zohran Mamdani is going for more, I think, legit socialism. But the reality is he can only do it so much under the existing system. If you want to have real socialism, like pure socialism, you need to dominate everything. Which is one of the reasons why socialists often say, well, it wasn't real socialism or it wasn't real communism. Just doing it in New York City, he won't have the ability to fully implement pure socialism. And he's walked back a lot of his statements. He said, for example, that he's not for like defunding the police. People pull up old posts from him. He very often talked about defunding the police. There are some mixed reports over his, government-run, again, I want to call them food halls or grocery stores. A lot of media have actually falsely quoted him saying he wants to give free food. Maybe that's part of it because, you could say food stamps are part of that. But what he's talking about are government-run grocery stores that would offer lower prices. The reality is when you do this, it's never sustainable because it messes up the entire free market. What you're likely to have is the lack of the insight into the free market from supply and demand. And you run into the same problems you have in every socialist country, which is the things in demand fly off the shelves, people buy it, people resell it. If he makes it too low of a cost, what's going to happen? You're going to have people, if, for example, it's more expensive in New Jersey, driving into New York, buying it in New York, and reselling it in New Jersey. It's going to upset the entire free market, and you're going to end up with shortages.
So can you give us some examples, real-world examples, where his policies are similar to his policies that have been implemented elsewhere, and what has happened?
So in the United States, there actually have been experiments with, you call them like government-run grocery stores, or sometimes usually they're run by like nonprofits. And what results in it is basically poorly run they close down very quickly, typically. You end up with large amounts of theft, especially if they say they're not going to prosecute or go after crime. People just steal it because why not? You can look at California, where they're experimenting with light on crime policies as it related to like storefronts. And what happened? Right? Anything under like $900 is a misdemeanor. What happens? People go in and they steal everything they want because there's no punishment for it. You end up with resellers. This is one of the issues, for example, that New York has dealt with like cigarette taxes. It creates a massive black market where people just buy it in one place and sell it in another because you have the free market functioning outside the system. The other thing you have, of course, is just badly run systems where, the issue you have with government-run systems as opposed to privately run. If you want to have something work in the private market, you have to have a few things. You have to have it so that it's sustainable, people want to buy from it. You need to have good service so people want to go there and don't go to your competitors. When you make it government run, you remove all of the information that educates what is demanded by the free market, quality of service and price.
I mean, what are the core fundamental principles of socialism? Is it just free stuff for those of us that is not so well versed in the subject?
There are different degrees of socialism. So, on the lighter end of it, there's like state capitalism. Technically, the Nazis, the National Socialist Party, the Nazis in Germany, they were technically like lighter socialism, which was a mixed model economy. They still had some free market principles, but a lot of socialist policies. And the way the Nazis worked is actually closer to the type of socialism light you see a lot of people trying to put in place in the United States. And what was it? Under the Nazis, of course, you had the mixed model economies, what they call state interventionism. And so you'd have, for example, businesses where the government would assign people to run the businesses, and you'd have a partially private, partially public system. That is light socialism. And so actually, again, I'm not talking about the race policies of the Nazis, but the economic policies. A lot of these socialists in America, in terms of economic policy, are closer to the Nazi party. But if you go to like real heavy socialism, that's when you get closer to actual communism. And so heavier socialism is when you get to like Stalinist type policies, breadline type policies. And if you get to that end of it, what is really socialism? Socialism is when you put communism into government. Communism is technically the negation of systems. It is not technically a government program, but you can implement communist policies within it. There are different extents of it. More extreme policies will have things like for like social divisions. More extreme policies will have things on, again, gender policies, agitation policies, where you try to view one person as your enemy, one person as your ally. We have seen this in the United States with gender policies and race policies. Every communist country has some kind of narrative with that, whether it's the evil billionaires or the evil kulaks, like they had, of course, of the wealthy peasants in Soviet Russia, whether it's the Jews like the Nazis had, who are deemed the enemies, whether it's the educated class, for example, in Cambodia, whether it's even in the United States where they called, the cis white male the enemy of the people, or whether now they talk about the evil billionaires as being the enemies of, the markets.
So how do you know when socialism has changed into communism? How do you know when communism is here?
Well, so this is where a lot of people get confused between socialism and communism. Socialism is the form communism takes when implemented into government. But true communism is only achieved with the negation of systems. So in order to achieve quote-unquote real communism, the socialist state would need to basically implode. You would need to basically destroy all the existing institutions to quote-unquote achieve communism. And so communism is not designed to work. It's designed to destroy. When a government becomes communist, they become a socialist government. You could say they're educated or inspired by a communist type, ideology or principle, but it will always be socialism when put into practice. So, and again, there are different degrees of it. I'm not saying Mondami is going to make New York City full-on communist. He's only going to be able to do it to a certain extent.
So you gave examples earlier of how socialism leads to problems, right? And history has shown that over and over. So why do we keep trying it?
Well, you'd think people would learn by now.
That's my question.
I would say the reason is because socialism claims to offer the solution to human suffering. And when you're told that, hey, people are starving, the solution is to give them free food. People are suffering, the solution is to kill or eliminate the people causing the suffering. There are people who view this as being like the compassionate thing to do. But what they don't really understand is that it does not work. You don't create wealth by targeting the wealthy. You create wealth by creating incentives or helping the poor build themselves up. You don't create wealth by tearing things down. You create wealth by building things. And so socialism is just based on redistribution of what is already there. Socialism really can't create wealth unless it feeds on the wealthy. But as soon as you feed on the wealthy, you remove the incentive, people stop bothering to do it, and it flattens society. Socialism is for the downward trend. And so, you could argue that there are problems within capitalism. A lot of people, including myself, would argue the problems that people point to in capitalism are usually from state interventionist policies. The reason, for example, why housing costs are so high, mostly because of red tape on new construction. If you want to fix the housing problem where people can't afford rent, remove these state interventionist policies which stem from socialism that prevent us from building new homes or allow monopolies to form. If you let the free market function, it means that when there's demand, you create supply, not that you restrict supply, increase demand, and then strangle society through it. So socialism always does not work because it can only work as long as you can feed on the capitalist.
Okay, just one last question, Josh. Do you think there will be a big impact, or maybe you don't think there will be a big impact if Mamdani, in fact, wins this race and becomes the next mayor for New York City?
There will be a big impact if Mamdani wins. I don't think the impact will be that heavy in New York. It will be. It will be to an extent. It's not going to be a whole lot worse than New York was, I think, under COVID, to be honest. Because he's going to be stopped from doing a lot of things because of the risk of losing government funding from the federal level. Trump is probably going to put his foot on the brakes and say, hey, you can't do that. It's probably not going to be a whole lot worse than California, to be honest, where they have a lot of these policies he's talking about already in place. And the other reality, too, is the city council in New York is already very far left. They already practice a lot of these policies. But the bigger impact is actually going to be more for what it means on the midterms and the future of the Democratic Party. Because right now, what do you have? You have really the Democratic Party looking for its new leadership, and you have them looking at AOC and Bernie Sanders, both of whom have been more on the Democratic Socialists of America side. This is really a battle, I think, for the future of the Democratic Party and the types of candidates who they choose as their front runners, which is why Cuomo is pushing back against Mamdani, which is why Nancy Pelosi is pushing back against Mamdani. The Democrats, I think, understand that, yeah, you might have a socialist win in a local election, but it's not going to work for the big ones. And the Democrats, if they go too far to the extreme, which is what the risk is here, they're going to lose the middle.
Coming up, shutdown-related flight cancellations continue for a third day today as the longest government shutdown in U.S. history persists. Travel blogger Jen Ruiz has tips on how to handle air travel this holiday season when we come back.
Don't wait. Call now to find out about our Medicare plan.
Why do we have to sit through so many Medicare commercials this time of year? It's endless. Good question, Edith. I'm glad you asked. We see so many commercials this time of year because it's the only time, other than special circumstances, when Medicare recipients can change their plan for Part C. Original Medicare only covers Parts A and B, but a Medicare Advantage plan has additional benefits that Original Medicare doesn't offer.
So now's the time to fill those spaces?
That's right, Archie. And every year, there are changes to what benefits you may receive from your Part C plan. Call right now to find out what plan best suits your needs.
It's easy, don't delay. Pick up the phone and call today.
Call now for your free Medicare review.
1-833-469-1754. 1-833-469-1754.
You may now return to your regularly scheduled programming.
As we naturally age, many people are getting zero amount of this incredible and unique substance. That's when we start seeing an impact in our joints, skin, nails, and even our digestion.
People ask me, Dr. X, what is the #1 supplement I should be taking? My answer is multi-collagen protein.
People's reactions to me, people were like, what are you doing? What is going on? You look amazing. You have a glow about you.
What makes Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen stand out from other brands? 10 types of collagen. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised with vitamin C and probiotics. It's proven to reduce joint discomfort rapidly, continuously, and persistently. It improves the appearance of crow's feet after 4 weeks and improves skin tone after 8 weeks. And it promotes hair thickness, growth, and a reduction in hair breakage.
It has transformed everything from my hair. Like, my hair was starting to kind of just, come out, and I don't have that anymore. My skin feels amazing.
Call the number on your screen and find out how to get a free bottle when you order, plus free shipping and our 30-day money-back guarantee. And as a bonus, we will include Dr. Josh Axe and Jordan Rubin's revolutionary book, Multi-Collagen Makeover, free with your order, plus free shipping and free returns.
I have implicit trust in Dr. Axe because the plan worked. I'm living proof of it.
This is the collagen protein that is backed by clinical studies. It's what my family uses, it's what I use, and I know you're going to benefit in a big way as well.
Love the results or get your money back. This special TV offer is not available in stores. Call the number on your screen or go online now.
Welcome back. What message is Secretary of War Pete Hegseth sending to nuclear-armed North Korea and China with his visit to South Korea? NTD's Tiffany Meyer spoke to retired Marine Colonel Grant Newsham to unpack the state of U.S.-South Korea relations. He is a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy and author of When China Attacks.
Now, Hegseth and his South Korean counterpart visiting the JSA, this is the first time in 8 years. First, what message is this joint visit sending to North Korea, but also China?
Well, on the surface, it could suggest that the Americans and the South Koreans and their militaries are very solidly linked and ready to take on any threats, particularly from North Korea. China, of course, is also looking at this, the U.S.-South Korea relationship to see what the strength of it is. Is there frictions in it? Are there weaknesses? There is, of course, a little more going on here, is that this all takes place in the context of a South Korean administration, which is very strongly leftist. But as I said, it comes on the top of a very leftist South Korean administration whose maybe their alliance or their commitment to the United States and the South Korean alliance, rather than a stronger sort of relationship with China, even with North Korea of all things, is very much in question. And that's something that is going to have to be carefully monitored and carefully dealt with if necessary.
And given what you just laid out there, we did see President Trump say after he met with China Xi in South Korea that he ran out of time to meet with Kim Jong-un, North Korea. But if the time or opportunity arose, he would go back to the region. With this, meeting with Hegseth and his South Korean counterpart at the JSA, how likely are we to see President Trump meet with Kim Jong-un in his second term?
Well, there's nothing that Mr. Trump does that should surprise us. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. Even on this most recent trip, I think we could see the two meeting up at some point. Not too soon, but I think it could happen.
And what would be the path for President Trump to bring down the rhetoric or the tensions in the Korean Peninsula, given all the interplay that you just mentioned with South Korea?
Well, that's a good question, because the South Koreans have what is called agency, which means that they make up their own minds, or better, I should say, the South Koreans' top leadership, the hardcore leftists that I mentioned. Most South Koreans do not want what they are selling. But how do you deal with a nation whose ideology is actually anti-American of all things and aligned with the Chinese Communist Party and North Korea, and is trying to establish a one-party state in South Korea? So it's an issue. It's intertwined with all of this, but bringing down the tensions, that's going to be very difficult, because by failing to take firm action, starting 30 years ago almost, and following on, the North Koreans have developed into a much more powerful military than they've ever been. They've got a lot of problems, but nonetheless, their conventional military development has been striking, with Chinese and Russian support for that. Additionally, their nuclear capabilities have gradually improved, as have their delivery systems. The long-range missiles, the ability to miniaturize nuclear weapons, to put them on missiles, to deliver them. That has been really just an engineering problem that they have had time to work on, do the necessary trial and error, and nothing that has been done in terms of sanctions against North Korea, etc., or even offering them sort of sweeteners, offering them benefits. None of that has worked. I would note that sanctions against North Korea, despite existing, have never really been enforced. And the Chinese have broken these from almost day one and have suffered no punishment from anyone for having done so. So when you hear sanctions don't work against North Korea, always remember sanctions have never been tried.
Next, nationwide flight cancellations continuing for the third day amid the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. More than 1,700 flights were canceled today, according to flight tracking website FlightAware. The FAA announced initial cuts Friday as traffic control staff shortages continue. Here to discuss all things air travel amid the shutdown is travel blogger Jen Ruiz. Thank you so much for joining us, Jen. What is the state of the travel industry under the shutdown and with these flight cuts now?
It is really challenging, particularly air travel. You still have the alternative of taking a train, of driving somewhere if you're traveling domestically or somewhere that can be reached that way. But air travel is really chaotic right now just because we're at about 5% flight cancellations today, and we're expected to hit 10% by Friday.
Yeah, and we're talking about this 10%. So what impact could that have with that escalation?
A lot. So first, we have a lot of delayed and canceled flights, and that has a domino effect, particularly as the day goes on. So right now, the very first thing that airlines are encouraging people to do is to check to see if they're able to cancel their own flights or reschedule their own flights preemptively. Practically every airline has instituted a flexible cancellation program or policy so that you wouldn't get charged in order to make those changes. And it's uncertain whether or not this will be resolved by Thanksgiving. Kayak.com put out a study that Monday is actually the best day to travel, but I would absolutely advise trying to avoid air travel on those days on or around Thanksgiving wherever possible.
Yeah, and hopefully this won't even be an issue around Thanksgiving. We are hearing inklings of talk on Capitol Hill about the potential of this shutdown ending soon, but it is, a historically long shutdown. So, how can air travelers prepare for this year's holiday season if indeed, these cancellations and delays spread and perhaps go even beyond 10%?
Absolutely. So you mentioned FlightAware, which is a great site because it in addition to showing you where your actual plane is, you can actually search to see the number of cancellations per airport. It is the kind of major airports being affected now as opposed to the smaller regional airports. And definitely still traveling first thing in the morning is your best bet because the plane is usually already there and is not delayed coming from someplace else. Something new that we're seeing people do now is actually schedule what they call backup flights. So there may be scheduling 2 or 3 flights, hoping that one of them takes off. If you're able to make this work with the new flexible cancellation policies that are temporarily in place, absolutely take advantage of that. Otherwise, you can use points and miles as a way to book perhaps an alternate backup flight that you can cancel without penalties and just get those points reinstated to your account for any reason. So it is definitely a challenging time right now, but if you anticipate these delays, I would also recommend making sure that you have your information up to date on your app for the airline that you're flying with, because that's how you'll be the first to know when there is a cancellation or that there is something wrong so that you can hurry to rebook, because time is of the essence. You're going to be trying to rebook with everyone else on your plane that is trying to do the same. And there's only going to be a limited amount of open spots on any alternative flights that are still going. So making sure your information is up to date and that you act quickly the minute that you get a notification is going to be of the essence.
Now, you mentioned, I want to go back, you mentioned how it's possible to, say, book multiple flights because of these flexible cancellation policies. So my concern with that, though, is that what if people, a few maybe unscrupulous people book 5 flights, 6 flights, just in case to have a backup for the backup, and then, the people who are trying to get places, they can't get a flight because of that.
And that is truly the unprecedented, pardon me, that is the unprecedented issue that we are dealing with right now, particularly because this hasn't really happened before. And so you are seeing that, and that is a possible consequence. And so I can't really speak as to whether or not that's going to be taking up spots for other people. It is going to be a natural consequence of kind of the chaos that we're in right now.
Yeah, but I guess, you got to do what you got to do. Do you have any tips for staying comfortable in an airport if you're waiting for a connecting flight? I mean, I had to spend the night in an airport earlier this year. It was not comfortable.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And so I would recommend Priority Pass. You can get one for as low as $99 a year, and it gives you lounge access to different lounges around the world. So even if you don't have a credit card or other airline status or way to access these lounges, you as a normal traveler or passenger can get access and have more of a place to relax, especially if you have long delays. I love the Minute Suites. They're under the Priority Pass program, and they're basically these rooms that you can rent out where you have a place where you can lay down, you have a television, you have snacks, and most importantly, you're away from the chaos of the airport. Also, for anybody who is autistic or just feels very overwhelmed by being around a lot of people at the airport, a lot of airports are now having sensory rooms, sensory deprivation rooms, where you can go in and have a quiet space. They're usually gated, so you have to enter a code and not everybody can have access to them. And that's a great way for people who are feeling very overwhelmed by the stress of the airport to utilize those amenities provided.
That sounds like a nice place that we could have here at NTD because things get a little stressful sometimes, as you might imagine. How have you been personally affected by this? I mean, I imagine you have some trips planned. What are you doing?
I personally am looking wherever possible to see what the alternatives are, and if I can keep my travel domestic and if I can drive or take a train instead, which is sad. I actually travel quite often for my birthday, which is during the holidays. But even if things are restored relatively quickly, like we're hoping they would be, we don't know what the effects will be long term on the industry. And so I'm not really 100% sure that the industry and that the air travel in general is going to reboot by the holidays and by New Year. So I'm trying to find alternatives wherever possible and plan trips that maybe are not as far or as I would have wanted to go, but that are still exciting here locally.
Well, let's hope this shutdown ends and everyone can get their holiday travel in somewhat of a reasonable shape, because it's crazy enough as it is. Travel blogger Jen Ruiz, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, real wellness does not come from detoxing. In January, a functional medicine doctor says setting yourself up for success this holiday season starts here and now in November. Stay tuned.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now. With your gift of $19 a month, we'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Welcome back to NTD. President Trump has announced that Kazakhstan will join the Abraham Accords. NTD's Tiffany Meyer spoke to David Wormser, a Middle East affairs analyst at the Center for Security Policy, to discuss how the move could bolster U.S. and Israeli interests.
Now, this is seen as a mostly symbolic move, given that Kazakhstan has had diplomatic relations with Israel since 1992. But what do you make of this announcement?
Well, first of all, it does build a little bit of momentum. I wouldn't say it's a massive amount of momentum, but it's good. It's good. It's the right direction. In the Middle East, when anything goes the right direction, it's a good day. But I put a little more importance to it than simply validating something that was done already in 1992. I believe that there is a block emerging. The last day that J.D. Vance was in Israel, about 2 weeks ago, he said something about hopefully Israel can expand the Abraham Accords, and with the expansion of the Abraham Accords, we form a strategic bloc that then begins to anchor American and Western interests that allow us to disengage from the area to some extent. And I think now when you're seeing Kazakhstan is an important country in terms of energy, in terms of all sorts of things, and it's a big country, I think that you see the bloc that J.D. Vance is talking about is expanding, and it's beginning to gain real anchor.
And digging into that, officials said Kazakhstan's participation in the Abraham Accords would enhance their bilateral trade and cooperation with Israel. That is similar to what the Wilson Center said happened to the other countries that signed on to the Abraham Accords before. Talk to us about how the Abraham Accords have boosted people-to-people relationships in private and civil sectors.
Yeah, there's no doubt Israel is one of the hotbeds of innovation and industrial capability in terms of the new economies, in terms of what makes a new economy, namely high tech and so on and so forth. And yet in a lot of these countries, you have either pockets of interest in that, or you have money coming from other sources like oil and so forth. And they're looking to hook up with Israel so that they can get synergy to leverage the money they make with raw materials and other assets to essentially kick their economies up to a higher level. And on the private sector, private basis, people want to make more money with the money they have. So Israel's becoming a real sort of incubator for the whole region, and Kazakhstan's a different region. It's Central Asia, but it's really bordering the Middle East, and it also is the same. It's also a lot of old trade patterns. Kazakhstan's a very strategic relation. It's on the Silk Road. These are sorts of large-scale corridors that really are to our advantage if they fall to peace and begin to establish a basis. And finally, it's a blocking maneuver to China.
On that note, looking ahead, in your view, what other countries could we see sign on to the Abraham Accords during President Trump's second term?
Well, Indonesia. Indonesia is the big one right now. If Indonesia joins, it's the most populous Muslim country in the world. It's a country Israel trusts to some extent, which means they could form a real good basis for peacekeeping forces that the Israelis trust to put into Gaza or elsewhere. So Indonesia, I think, is the big one. But I think Indonesia also could provide cover for the other big one. And the other big one is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia doesn't want to lurch into peace without the Palestinian issue moving a bit further. it doesn't want to feel alone in holding the bag. But if Indonesia joins as the largest Muslim country in the world, this kind of gives Saudi Arabia cover and could help nudge them across the finish line.
And David, in terms of the Gaza Strip, we are seeing multiple reports that a number of Hamas terrorists are stuck in a tunnel network behind Israeli lines, and that the Trump officials are proposing that Israel use this crisis to develop a model to have Hamas disarm. Now, Israelis have yet to accept, and NTD cannot independently verify these reports. But what are your thoughts on this issue?
It's a tricky issue because clearly the Israelis, under an Egyptian proposal, would allow the 200 or so terrorists to depart from the tunnels and out to where Hamas is, or out of the area, but they would have to give up their weapons along the way. But for Israel, this is tough because these are deadly killers, many of whom tortured, raped the hostages, killed many of them, held these hostages. The Israelis want to bring them to justice. There's a lot of pressure on that. There's also the other issue, pressure in the other direction on Israel. There may be dead hostages in those tunnels still, and Israel is afraid that if they just, say, fill the tunnels with concrete and kill the terrorists, they may lose those dead hostages forever. So there's a lot of cross pressures, but there is a model here, true, where I think the administration's pushing it, which is let them go to outside the area, but they give up their weapons, and that's a good model for the rest of Hamas to give up and go into exile without their weapons and give the weapons up to an international force.
The upcoming holiday season could disrupt your usual eating and lifestyle habits, leaving you feeling out of sorts. How to set yourself up for success this holiday season? NTD's Stephania Cox spoke to functional medicine doctor Dr. Vaughn Watts for his insight.
Certainly. Now, the holiday season often comes with a few excesses where we break our usual food and lifestyle choices, and it can leave you feeling kind of out of sorts. But you say that it isn't the food or the parties. It's actually the stress that gets to us most. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, the stress is really the biggest thing that can affect some of our issues we have in the wintertime, in the holiday months. You know, under pressure, our digestive enzymes production drops, our digestive flow slows, our gut lining becomes more permeable. So all these things cause a lot of issues like bloating, food reactivity, and inflammation. So chronic stress can feed the wrong microbiome and cause all sorts of gut issues, which can cause all sorts of other symptoms and problems.
Mind and body all tied in together, but I know you've been looking at this in quite a lot of depth. What do you find really works to lower that stress?
Well, one of the best things that you can do with lowering stress is the number one thing I tell people to start with is getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. When you get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, you wake up more restful, you don't crash in the afternoon. And with that as well, your body's able to re-energize because you do a lot of your healing. It helps to reduce inflammation. It helps to balance our cortisol levels, which all of those things can be affected by stress. And stress really, if we're really stressed out, it'll make those cortisol levels spike, which then leads to many other problems.
Speaking of being, having odd sleep rhythms, especially it's prevalent when you're out of your natural rhythm, as with seasonal parties or on vacation. And at that time, cravings can take hold. So how can people guard against those cravings that might come up?
Well, and it comes back to stress, because at the end of the day, this holiday season, it's hard to be perfect. There's a lot of good food out there, and a lot of that food is filled with things that we probably wouldn't eat on a normal basis, a lot of sugar, a lot of carbs. So really, like I said, you really want to try to balance those cortisol levels, keep those blood sugar levels in check. And the first thing, and it's a simple thing, is one, is getting the good sleep. And then two, when you wake up first thing in the morning, there's a couple little tips you can do, like drinking some water with a little bit of lemon in it, get some fat or protein within the first hour of waking, and get moving a little bit. And it doesn't mean you have to go out and work out. I'm just talking move, walk a little bit, get that lymphatic system flowing. So the whole body starts flowing early at the beginning of the day so that you're setting up success for the whole rest of the day.
Sounds great. So practical, and so sounds like really items that people can implement tomorrow. So for people who are hosting parties, say, or even if you're choosing items from a smorgasbord at a party, or just cooking for yourself, what food choices can help people stay feeling well even after they have a huge meal, say?
Yeah, so first of all, I always go with whole foods, right? Make sure you're eating real food, stay away from ultra-processed foods, stuff that comes out of a package, bottle, or can. And then when you're choosing the foods, reach for the fat, the protein, and the vegetables. If you kind of make that a good portion of your plate, and say half or more of your plate, and then a little scoop of something sugary or dessert, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Your body's going to get the fuel it needs to be able to process some of the garbage that we're going to be eating throughout the holiday season much easier.
Quite a array of options there. It doesn't sound like too much discipline required if you really think about it. But I know you were formerly a military intelligence officer, and your approach has been described as having military precision now when it comes to your approach to health. But it also seems quite intuitive to me. I wonder your take on that.
Yeah, I try to, when I look at the body, and then, my background in I worked for the NSA as a young Marine many moons ago. And, when you're, as a cryptographer, you look at patterns, you look at these patterns are going to help you to break and crack certain codes. It's the same thing with the body. The body is not just one organ, just one little system. The whole body works as an entire system. So understanding how the entire body works, and it really isn't that complicated. Give it the right fuel, and the body will function the way it needs to. And the fuel is good fats, proteins, and vitamins and minerals. And you get most of that from good, healthy meat choices and vegetables and fruits. And if you can, like I said, if you can load up on the majority of that, your body can handle the stuff that's not maybe the best, because you're more like 80-20, 80 good and 20 not so good. Your body can process that, and the liver can process that well.
And just in the last 30 seconds, Doctor, your book, Foundational Wellness, has been described as both a warning and a roadmap. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so what it does is it takes health, and it really teaches it in a very simple way. In my philosophy and my belief is that most all disease is caused by one thing, and that's organ dysfunction. And the human body is made to heal itself when our organs are functioning the way they're designed to. And when they stop functioning and they start dysfunctioning, dysfunction leads to inflammation, and then inflammation leads to chronic inflammation, which eventually leads to disease. And the two main things that cause organ dysfunction is nutritional deficiency. You're not getting enough of the essential vitamins and minerals and nutrients, or toxicity. And we live in a very toxic world now, exposed to all sorts of things, from heavy metals to molds to environmental toxins like pesticides. And so it's just important to, when you understand that, it makes nutrition or even health very simple. Make sure I eat the right things, make sure I'm getting the good nutrients, and then doing a periodic detox once a year, ensuring that, hey, you know what, we're exposed to this stuff, especially in the first world, we're very exposed to this stuff. And it doesn't matter how healthy you eat, you're still exposed to it. So getting on a good detox routine, like once a year, kind of spring cleaning of the body, can really help to keep the body in good shape.
That's all for today's news. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.